To my friends Deepak, Sonu, Pata colleagues, to esteemed members of the Nepal tourism industry, delegates from around the world, it is an honor to be here. Namaste. As I would say in my traditional languages of the traditional territories I come from, Hosea, which is the Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh and Liwat nations, welcome, and kia ora, because I'm a New Zealander as well. So it is wonderful to be here. I'm going to talk today about human capital development issues and needs in the Asia Pacific. And we're going to look a little bit here in Nepal as well. So why do we say human capital? It's a strange word, right? We think about human resources normally, but human capital is an investment in people. And is perhaps the most important investment that we can make. Look at Mai Lai here from the villages up in Sapa in Vietnam. Chinapuri from Cambodia, studying at a school in Salabai. Natalia from Canada, from where I live, at the Capilano Suspension Bridge. And this lovely woman who I met just yesterday, and she serves a wonderful coffee, and she works right here at the Saltee Crown Plaza. The thing is that in tourism, we have a major talent deficit around the world. In fact, the numbers of recent studies show us that 36 of 47 countries, or I got that wrong, 37 of 46 countries have a talent deficit, we would call it, in travel and tourism over the next 10 years. In monetary terms, this means not only are there 14 million jobs that are not filled, it also means that we have around about $610 billion of lost revenue in the industry. So, that means, let's put that in context, not one Bill Gates, but, in fact, let's see if this works, 11 Bill Gates. I kind of wished it was 12, that would fill out my slide there. But 11 Bill Gates, that's how much money we're losing in the industry, in value. As we know, in the Asia Pacific, the numbers of tourism are growing at incredible rates. Some estimates are 3 times the global average of tourism growth in the Asia Pacific. Some of our PATA numbers estimate around about about an 8% growth. And in some areas, in particular, South Asia and Southeast Asia, those numbers are at the highest. So what does this mean? It means that we've got some challenges in the Asia Pacific alone in terms of human capital development. There's been a number of studies done, and I'm going to draw on those to give you some information about this. One of them was done by one of PATA's important partners, EarthCheck, along with Griffith University. It was done for APEC, and it was really to figure out what's going to happen with all the transition of labour in the Asia Pacific over the next few years. You probably know about the ASEAN Mobility Agreement. Well, look at these numbers in terms of how many young people are able to move around the region now. And they're going to all kinds of jobs, a lot of them are tourism. So that's the kind of study that's been done. There's more work that's been done. Another good colleague of ours, Peter Simone, he's done a study for the UNWTO, and it's more of a country-focused approach. And what he's finding out, and Peter and EarthCheck and others are helping us identify some of these challenges. So, what do we got going for us in the Asia Pacific? There's a lot going for us. Number one, unparalleled regional tourism growth, we just mentioned. Now, tourism is often a national priority. We've got a huge pool of untapped talent. Abundant skilled professionals in a whole range of areas, not just tourism. We've got incredibly hospitable nature of people in the region. Nepal is the classic example of that. We've got this ASEAN Mutual Recognition Agreement, which increases mobility. We've got some standardization and certification in some sectors. We've got some national frameworks, not everywhere. We've got some accredited education providers, that means at global standards, but not everywhere. And we've got incremental improvements in the quality of teachers and so on. We've got a lot of private sector engagement, we see that right here. But we got some challenges. So let's take a quick look at them. We have things like an overall lack of qualified and experienced tourism professionals, a lack of high-end supervisory and management skills. We've got a high turnover rate in the industry, and really importantly, and I know this is critically important here in Nepal, we've got a serious talent drain to other countries. We have tourism is oftentimes is not considered a preferred career path. We know the reasons for that. And it's a transient workforce, a lack of coordination, and insufficient and adequate training programs, plus a lack of accurate data. So there's a few things to work on. That's everywhere. That's right throughout the region. But as I said before, human capital is perhaps our most important investment. So how do we deal with this? What do we do? Well, so that's a good question. What should we do? The reality is, and it was so accurately and well articulated this morning, is that our future belongs to the next generation. The next generation that operates in a very different way, has a range of different values, and it is no different no matter which country you go to. This is what we don't want. And this is what we have so often. In our classrooms, people fall asleep because it's boring. People sit at the front and they yak and they tell you what to do, and I think you probably know this, but you'll only retain about 10% of what you hear. If you do it, you'll retain about 80%. So we have to think about that and how we do our training. The reality is that the next generation has a different set of needs, and they want to stay in jobs. And there's some work that's been done, or rather, we want them to stay in jobs. There's some work that's been done to try and figure out how to do that, but these are the kinds of issues that individuals want to stay in their jobs. So it's mobility and it's retention. So let's ask our wonderful hosts over here. I'm going to go back one slide there. Let's ask our wonderful hosts over here, our MCs, what do you want from a job in the future?
So I think after seeing about my country, people of my country, what I would like in a job, I think it must be respectable and it must be well paid.
Excellent. Respect and well paid. We should applaud that. Thank you, Shona. Anish.
Yes.
After you've got your glass of water.
That's okay.
Could you tell us, what do you want from a job in the future?
Well, I want a job that recognizes my talent and also an environment where I can work and I can grow myself, not only just because me, also I can take the fly off with my organizations too, so I want a better environment to work on.
Okay, so you want respect as well, and you want an environment you can grow and flourish in. All right, there's critical issues that were just identified. This is a little bit of an old study, 2008, but nevertheless, it's the same kind of information. And what this shows us, in actual fact, that what youth want are an opportunity to learn and grow. They want to develop in their jobs. They do want good pay, and they want to actually have people mentor them. So there isn't just a role for new people to take, or new generations to take over. It's a role for us all to work together and share our knowledge. Interestingly, company brand is not that critical. Profit share, not that critical. Although I noticed that in Asia, social networking in your job is actually quite important. I suspect that's probably the case for everybody now. So, the other issue is talent and losing talent. Now, I know that in many countries, thousands of students or thousands of youth leave the country to go to jobs elsewhere because they can't get the job they want in that country. And that is unfortunately the case that we know is prevalent in Nepal. I won't say the number in case it's wrong, but I have a sense of what the number is. And so that's an important issue. So how do you keep your talent? How do you retain your talent? It might be through things that are being identified for us here. It's okay to travel overseas and learn and study in overseas and learn different experiences. Actually, it's very healthy and a good thing to do. But the question is, how do you bring the people back? So you have to have an engaging industry. So that means we've got to work together. This is the Pata model. We work together with industry, with educators, and with government. It is a unique characteristic of the organisation. That's the kind of work that needs to be done in human capital development as well. It needs to be this combination of youth and experience all coming together, and it needs to be something which is dynamic and ongoing. I'll give you a little example. Just 3 days ago I was in Hong Kong, and I was at a first ever Dean's Summit of Tourism, and it was led by the legendary Kay Chon at Hong Kong Polytechnic University. And this was an opportunity for us all to come together and figure out what to do next. And what we realised we have to do next is make sure we are fully engaged with industry. There are important trends afoot. We don't know what's happening with artificial intelligence on the workforce and on jobs of the future. We just, as identified by Skift in one of their 2017 megatrends, there are all kinds of things underway right now. Robots are becoming concierges, automatic check-ins at airports, even cleaning is done by robots. There are now ways of determining your future based on past patterns of travel, and so you get dished up all kinds of opportunities that you're going, or options that you should have for future travel. There's even hotel rooms where you walk into and it redesigns the hotel room based on your recorded preferences. So it's happening quickly, incredibly quickly, but there is still and that's why we have to keep the work going of building and working with youth in a meaningful way. These are PATA member organisations which are fully engaged in this next phase of education, where we have to start thinking about, instead of block learning, thinking about higher integration learning with industry and taking into account trends such as artificial intelligence, augmented reality, and those things and how they affect our learning. There are standards that you can apply to around the globe, but even those standards are things that we're looking at and exploring right now in terms of changing. The problem, or the reality I should say, is that it's a global industry and we are all judged on a global standard. So in Nepal, for example, we have new institutes which are being developed, and that is highly commendable. The reality also is that we need to develop those at international standards, because that's how we're judged. So while we're doing that kind of work and figuring out how to training, we've got to figure out what kinds of jobs people want. There is a lot of emphasis on small and medium enterprises, making sure that there is ownership, empowerment for individuals to pursue their own paths. There's also different ways of doing training. This study was done a little while ago, or last year actually, by the Dutch organisation SNV, and it was on high-impact training methods. So it was a particular study, segment was done on Nepal, and it was talked about how important short-term focused training was. This is something that we've been doing actually a lot of in PATA with our Human Capital Development Program. And we have individual workshops which are designed for specific needs of building that capability. And I'm not trying to do a sales plug, I'm just saying that this is how it works. And there's other organisations doing this. But now I will do a sales plug because Paul told me to, and we've got a PATA Academy coming up in the near future, and we're going to talk more about that later on this evening as well. But the point is that we need to think differently about how we educate. So it's not just global standards, it's the right kind of education, it's progressive education, it's bite-sized, and it is going to need to work with future generations and how they communicate. It also needs to provide equal opportunities to all, regardless of cultural, gender, or any other background. This is all about the future and about working together. Now I'm stuck. This is a couple of photos of work that we've been doing in communities in Cambodia and Vietnam as well, actually on the same themes. So, here's to summarise, what can and should we do? We can. understand next generation needs and interests. We can stop the talent drain through meaningful futures. We can collaborate amongst industry stakeholders. We can understand human resource technology interface, the whole AI future. We need to develop tourism-related human capital strategic plans. We need to establish and improve tourism schools at quality standards which are international. We need to build and support entrepreneurship training, SME development, and we need to apply training relevant to needs and appropriate conditions such as short-term flexible training options. That's a common element across the Asia Pacific. Perhaps it's relevant in a lot of different places, but something to think about. So, finally and importantly, firstly, achieve gender equity and equality in the sector. So thank you, namaste. I hope that was of some interest. It's been a pleasure spending with you today.
Ladies and gentlemen, he was Mr. Chris Bottrill, Chairman of Pacific Asia Travel Association.